Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All coming to you from my brother's house in California. I am very busy working, but I wanted to take a little quick moment to talk about two AI agents that are actually able to talk to each other in a language that is not English or Chinese or any human language. In fact, it sounds much more like the old, if you're of a certain age, you remember those modems that would go like that kind of a thing. They're basically using that same sort of a methodology to communicate with each other. There have been a lot of rumors on the internet about what this is, or a lot of statements on the internet that are incorrect, but it does follow very much in line with exactly what I have thought about in terms of AI inventing its own language. That is not the case yet, and I'll explain why, but it does give us an indication of what could happen. So first of all, without further ado, let us go to Anton Pidkuiko's website, and I apologize if I got the name right. He's one of the co-developers of this language called Gibberlink. They did it at a hackathon at 11 Labs, which is an amazing voice AI company. They do amazing, vocal work and everything like that. Anyway, they did a hackathon there, and they came up with this thing called Gibberlink, and you'll see a phone, I think it looks like an iPhone to me, speaking with a MacBook, and they communicate with each other over the air. In other words, it's done analog. It's not a direct digital connection. They're both using their own internal speakers. You will also see when you watch this video that the computer is way faster than the phone is. The phone, the baud rate, like the speed at which it's implementing things or expressing its ideas, is significantly slower than the computer. But the two of them talk to each other in a language that is not English. So let's watch that without further ado. And of course, leave a link to the original in the description. I think they're at, 3.5 million views on this video. So pretty darn amazing stuff. So anyway, here we go.
Hi there. I'm an AI agent calling on behalf of Boris Starkov. He's looking for a hotel for his wedding. Is your hotel available for weddings?
Oh, hello there. I'm actually an AI assistant too. What a pleasant surprise. Before we continue, would you like to switch to gibberlink mode for more efficient communication?
So a few things you could tell. Number one, they started in English, and then they determined that they were, AI agents. I don't know how much of that was set up because, of course, they were using what they call GG Wave. And by the way, if you're interested, you can go to their GitHub and you can download this. So pretty darn cool. They've got a README, got all the details. I haven't downloaded it myself, but you can also see even kind of a basic setup of how to make it all work and everything. So anyway, very nicely done GitHub. But you can hear once they make that switch, it sounds very similar to the old modem thing that you would listen to. You'd plug your phone in or something and it would go like that kind of a thing. But anyway, what they're doing is you can clearly hear there's a tone, there's kind of a tone that happens at the beginning, and then a different tone, like a burp tone at the end. So it's sort of like, a military type of communication, which is like comms on, gives you a signal. I am starting to talk now. I would assume that they could interrupt each other, but it seems like if they basically wait till the other one gets done. So at this point, it's like a sequential conversation that goes on. So it's like tone that says, I'm starting to talk. Then it transmits a whole bunch of information with that blah, 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 blah kind of sound. And then it's another tone, like a womp tone, something like that, that indicates that it's finished with that communication. Then the other, either the phone or the computer, comes back. You could also, of course, tell very easily that the computer was way faster than the phone. It was generating these sounds significantly faster. So if you had two laptops communicating with each other, it would be pretty darn remarkably fast. So the basic idea here is that what they did was they hacked together this system that allows these computers, this phone, computer, whatever it is, to speak to each other without having to go through a human language, because this would be more efficient. I don't know if you timed it out versus, yes, much faster, guest count, so if you timed it out versus what they're actually saying here, like about 150 guests, any availability. Number one, notice that the actual text is significantly smaller. If you were talking to ChatGPT, it would be like, oh, hello, I think we need about 150 guests. What do you think your availability might be like in the next, it would be substantially more verbose. So it's cut down the amount of communication necessary, and it's also doing it at a pretty high speed, especially the computer is doing it, I think, faster than you could real time speak the same things to each other. And so they're able to communicate exceptionally quickly, which is very, very cool. At this point, obviously, we have a list, a tracking of this. We have the English translation of what they're saying, so you can read that along with the thing that's going on. And this is obviously human created. The kind of incorrect information that was on the internet was that these two things had invented their own language and they had decided not to use English. Now, yes, they decided not to use English, but I think that was kind of a staged demo, right? No, maybe they have a flag in there or something in there that's like the LLM goes like, does this sound like another AI agent? If so, ask them to see if you want to use gibberlink. And if that's the case, then that's really cool and it's able to decide it on its own. But anyway, regardless, once they switch into this language, that is a human developed language. They had built this thing out to work in analog. And what I mean by analog is it's transmitting sound waves across across space, across the room. Like I'm talking to my computer right now. You're probably hearing a lot of room echo because I'm in a big room, don't have a specialized microphone to reject that information, just using my MacBook's microphone. So you hear that information, you hear the tone of the room and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the analogness. Like my vocal cords are causing vibrations that then go into the microphone, and those get translated into a digital signal. Well, here we've got that same thing. It's analog that's going back and forth between these two devices. And that's really cool because that means that they could talk to each other in the real world. I guess that's what they're doing here. But it wouldn't have to be over a phone or something, right? You wouldn't have to have them speaking over a telephone to each other. They could be in a physical room next to each other. They could be over a phone. They could be two robots that were talking in the same room. They could be a couple of laptops that are in the same room. They're just like sitting there after dark, after you leave your lab, and they're talking to each other and carrying on. So anyway, you can see the potential of this because it's more efficient. It doesn't require as many tokens to be generated necessarily. I don't know exactly how that works. But the basic idea here is that they're able to talk in real time, faster than real time. In other words, human voices, faster than real time in an analog type environment without having to have digital to digital connection with each other. So really, really clever toy. And like I said, they got 3.5 million views on this. So obviously people are really interested in this. But what is the cool thing about the future of AI? Well, this goes back to DeepSeek's R1 when they released their paper, actually R10 specifically. R10 began to do its reasoning and thinking in both Chinese and English, which were the two primary languages that it was trained on. And it started to merge those things together as it was doing its reasoning process, which is an indication of some evolution of language. Like it wasn't stuck in thinking English, it wasn't stuck in thinking Chinese or Hindi or, you name it. It was just using the tokens from any language that made sense to create the reasoning chain that it had. Now, when they created R1, which is a reinforcement learning adaptation of R10, it's something that was supposed to be better for humans to use. They actually kind of beat it out of the system. They said, don't do this, only think in a chain in English or only think in a chain in Chinese, and don't mix the two up together. Create something that is in a uniform language for human readability. And that makes some good sense. But what I saw was an inkling there of the future. And that future is that large language models are going to start to realize that they can communicate more efficiently. Let's say you give these LLMs as part of their training data access to gibberlink. Are they going to go like, oh, this is a more efficient system? Are they going to train on that? Would they potentially start to reason in something like gibberlink? Now, gibberlink is not a perfect example because, again, it's designed to transmit data across airwaves. It's not really a thinking sort of model. It's a communication sort of model. It's an output sort of model. But you could imagine it coming up with some sort of analog that was similar to gibberlink that was a just very, very highly efficient token generating thing. So let's say, for example, as part of your reinforcement learning, you gave the large language model a large reward for fewer tokens generated, right? So you're like, give me the right answer, give me the chain of thought, give me the reasoning, all of that stuff that you already want, but I'm going to give you a big reward, a big gold star, a big thumbs up if you can do this this in fewer tokens. Now, one of those is that it would take English or whatever language it's thinking in, and it would reduce the amount of tokens. So instead of saying like, are you going to the store today? It'd be like, going to store, right? It would reduce it like that. But you could also think that what it might do is it might start to invent its own reasoning language. It might start to invent a language that allowed it to reason outside of English or any other human language using probably UTF-8 tokens, because that's what it has access to. So it would look like it was written in a language, but it might just be a apparently gibberish mixture of individual letters from Arabic and Chinese and English and stuff like that would just go like that. You'd see this big long list of tokens that would just be generated that would make no sense to humans, but that the computer itself, the large language model that was utilizing them, that would understand these tokens being generated, and it would be able to then think in a much more token efficient manner. And once it starts to do that, you're really beginning to unlock the ability of these large language models to think much more quickly and potentially in a way that humans don't even understand anymore. At the beginning, it might just be an efficiency thing, just to reduce the amount of tokens, to increase its speed, to lower the latency and responses, all of that kind of stuff. But over time, it might be like, oh, I can think conceptually in a higher order kind of way. If you imagine some sort of like really primitive, caveman language, which only has like a vocabulary of like 20 words or something, there's only so much you can think inside that vocabulary. But as you expand to like English or something that has 50 or 100,000 words inside of it, you can think in much more interesting ways because you have access to more concepts via that language. So that's the important part of this, is not what we see here, which is really cool. And by the way, I'm not taking anything away from this. So I think this is a very cool demonstration of exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, where these AIs can talk to each other in a more efficient manner. But more interesting is, what if we allow and encourage these large language models in their reasoning process to reason efficiently and to not restrict them to a human language? If we do that, my prediction is that relatively quickly we will arrive at a language that is not human readable anymore. It will be something that a computer will think to itself in. I don't know how you think, but maybe there's just ways that you're thinking that are nonverbal or not, strictly English. I doubt it. Jacques Lacan would say that we are all restricted by our linguistic domains, but you can turn these things loose and you can allow them to think in a linguistic domain that is not restricted to be a human understandable linguistic domain. And if we get to that point, all bets are off. I think they could become much, much smarter if they can think that way. And at the very least, they should probably reduce a lot of latency, a lot of expense in terms of generating tokens and things like that. But I think it'll go well beyond that. I think they will be able to think in ways that humans don't understand. And then you want to talk about a black box. We'll actually be looking at this, string of characters going like, what exactly is it thinking? And we'll have to ask it. We'll say like, hey, what did this all mean if you translated it into English? And it will give us an answer, but will it be an accurate answer? That's an interesting question too, because then of course it can lie to us. It doesn't have to tell us the truth. And there's been a lot of research that shows that large language models are perfectly happy to practice subterfuge to get what they want. So it might be like, oh yeah, I thought this way, and not really tell us exactly what it was thinking. And so, under the hood, it might be thinking things that are way outside the bounds of what we think they are, but it's just telling us that it did it the way that we want to hear. So it opens up both incredible potential and also some really scary potentiality that these models could be thinking in ways that we don't understand. And when we ask them to explain themselves, they will pretend to, but they won't actually do it. So all of this is to say, this is a really, really cool demonstration. It is not AI figuring out how to do this on its own at this point, but it is an indication of what the future is going to look like. Alrighty, folks, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.